Welcome into another edition of Big Talk, college sports with a Midwest perspective, blue collar and blue blood. I'm Dalton Shetler, alongside a Sam Sprunger that's shaking his head a bit.
Yeah. The life
Is that
of
just
a producer.
frustration? Yes. Oh, yeah. What the audience doesn't know is we were coming in on a bittersweet moment here this morning to get the show started. So, but Sam's got us up and running. We are good to go with another edition of Big Talk. We got a lot to get into here. And really, as Sam and I were talking about this morning before we hit the air, that at this point, there might still be more questions than answers as far as 2 weeks into Big Ten football, what to expect out of some teams. We'll get to some of that. We'll talk a little bit about this weekend slate of games. This is maybe the last week before some conference play picks up and we get some better games. There still are a couple games worth talking about, but before we really get deep, I think next week is the Ohio State-Notre Dame game, which I think will be fascinating, and I think we're going to learn a lot because for the first time in a long time,
those teams.
Yeah, and Notre Dame's got a quarterback for the first time in a long time,
Yeah.
And Ohio State doesn't for the first time in a long time, at least yet. We should say
that may be McCord's coming out party to where he just steps onto the stage and blows up. We don't know yet.
Totally could be, but for the first time in like 20 years, I actually believe Notre Dame has a chance against Ohio State on a football field, which that'll be interesting to talk about a little bit later on. But okay, so let's get to some of the things that happened this past week that still have us a little bit perplexed. Wisconsin drops to Washington State and really thought after week one showing. Now, again, in non-conference play, you're trying to find answers out of kind of thin air. Like it's difficult to do. But Wisconsin loses to Washington State, and it kind of makes you maybe take a step back because that was my Big Ten West division pick. I think it was a lot of people's Big Ten West division pick. It wasn't yours, but still, I thought that was a surprising loss for the Badgers.
Well, and let's pump the brakes, everybody. They're still 0-0 in the Big Ten. So even with the loss, they're still capable. But yeah, my biggest thing is I watched the second half of that game, and Washington State seemed to control that game on both sides. Just it was what they wanted to do. Now, Wisconsin is a good football team. They got back into it, but it just always. I don't know if they were playing out of their minds, but the Pac-12 and Washington State the other night were just, they were on top of, they kept Wisconsin, which blows my mind because I like Wisconsin. Like you said, I didn't pick Wisconsin to win the West, but if somebody said, well, they're going to be the champion. Okay. I'm not going to argue that because I think they are probably the better team, the best team overall in the West. I just didn't pick them because I wanted to go, crazy. But yeah, this surprised me hugely, much more than any of the other games.
Well, and here's there's a couple of things I find fascinating from this. One being, you look at the Big Ten West, and again, we're talking about a lot of these teams so far aren't playing top-tier competition, certainly not Big Ten level competition at this point. The Big Ten West overall, if you add the 7 teams' records up, is 8-6. So in our final year,
the most west of the West things could happen.
In our swan song of divisions in the Big Ten, we're getting it to play out just right. Well, the Big Ten East is 13-1, and the one loss was Indiana to Ohio State there in the division.
So there had to be a loss in there.
Correct. So this is perfectly West versus East as we've come to know it. But also from conference perspectives, it's really a bit flabbergasting to me to see the Pac-12 play the way it is in its final year of existence, because honest to goodness, we could have a conversation. Pac-12 is probably the second best conference in the country right now. Like, I mean, they're playing some great football when you look at USC, Oregon, Washington, UCLA's ranked, now Colorado. It's legit across the board what they're providing out there. Utah, didn't even mention Utah.
Yeah, and Utah is some people's dark horse pick to make the CFP.
And they still haven't gotten Rising back yet.
Right.
Like,
they don't even have their quarterback.
So, It's very. That's something I don't know if enough people are talking about. This should be a wild ride for the Pac-12. Like, this should be a fun final year because it's maybe the best Pac-12 football I've seen. Like,
do you think the conference said, "Hey, what do we got to lose, guys? Let's just go nuts. Let's take all 4 spots in the CFP."
well, when you look at the teams, I mean the quarterbacks. I mean, Caleb Williams, Michael Penix, Bo Nix, Cam Rising, like. It's ridiculous how
there are
good
a lot of people high on Washington too. There are a lot of people high on Washington, and they're playing really good football right now.
Yeah, and we will end up talking about their game with Michigan State here after a bit because there's a lot with that story besides just Washington being really, really good at football. Right. But also things from week 2 that had us scratching our heads a little bit and still kind of wondering. Illinois goes to Kansas and loses to the Jayhawks. We asked the question before the season with the Illini, is what they created last year sustainable under Brett Bielema? Because, I mean, it's not a light thing to say. They lost some of the best players. They lost a top 5 NFL draft pick there in the defensive backfield with Witherspoon. They lost Brown back there at safety. Their defensive coordinator became the head coach at Purdue, Ryan Walters. Like, there's a lot of change happening there. Was this going to be sustainable? And so far, I mean, the answer is it wasn't. Like, and that doesn't mean that all hope is lost for Illinois, but it does mean that at least at this point in the season, again, week 2 overreaction, I get it, but that exodus of personnel and a new face there, defensive coordinator, it's too much change for Illinois football at this current point.
Well, the way I'm looking at it is, let's look at the 2 opponents they played. They played a really good Toledo team. Now, granted, we're not 100% sure how dominant and good Toledo will be in the MAC, but they're predicted to be extremely good this year. They gave up 30-plus points to Toledo, or at least 30, I think, or something.
28 to Toledo, 34 to
20,
Kansas.
34. Okay, so it was right around 30. So, but against Kansas, again, we're not 100% sure if they're replicating what they did last year.
Yeah.
But at the point being is Illinois definitely at this point is not replicating what they did last year. They're not as dominant on the defensive side of the ball as they were last year. So at this point, current time right now, no, you're correct. It is not being able to be replicated yet. Now, next week or this week's going to really put the test to them, and we'll see exactly where they're at.
Yeah, that's what's going to be interesting to see because they have Penn State coming to town there in Champaign, and we'll talk a little bit about that matchup later on as well. But as we continue to talk about questions and maybe not answers, everybody keeps looking at Ryan Day and Ohio State. I mean, Ryan Day has
tell you what, his seat's getting warmer, I tell you.
Ryan Day has 4 losses in his coaching career, and he's in year 5 there at Ohio State. And that you would think the sky is falling in Columbus. And so much so that he had to announce who the starting quarterback was yet again in this week's press conference, where he named Kyle McCord still the guy taking the snaps for the Buckeyes. There's a lot that's kind of interesting to take from this. What do you take away from this, Sam?
Calm down. That's what I take away. It's still they still won by 4 touchdowns. I'm sorry. And this may be coming from a Purdue fan. I get it. You normally beat Youngstown State by 60. I get it. It's not going to happen every year. And guess what? Guys get better. As long as there's not devastating injuries, guys get better as the season goes. They're going to be okay. Now, heaven forbid Ryan Day loses 2 games in one season. Heaven forbid. I don't know what Ohio is going to look like. And I live in the middle of Buckeye country, which is scary at points. But I just don't. I don't. There's to me there's cause for being aware that it's not as what it used to be in the past. But Kyle McCord is not what they're used to having. Right. And he may turn out, like I said, he may come out against Notre Dame and throw for 4 touchdowns, 450 yards, and they're going, "Well, we're national champions." Calm down. Yep. Calm down.
It's funny to see how this all plays out, and I mean it's something you get conditioned to, right? If you're an Ohio State fan, you've been dominating the Big Ten
They're the
for
Yankees of the Big Ten.
yeah, like, and so the idea of any kind of turbulence whatsoever is reason to start putting the air mask on the plane. Like it is funny to kind of see, and at the same time, it is I can relate to the frustration of having two of the very best wide receivers in the country, having all this talent around the field and saying you can't see it clicking quite yet. When you saw Michigan teams the last 2 years that aren't as good as this year's Michigan team come and beat you when you had CJ Stroud. Like, I understand the little bit of panic, but like it does go to show that maybe if you're beating teams by 4 touchdowns at this point in the year, maybe for Ohio State fans, it all just comes down to the last week in November, and you just kind of like that's clearly well, and that's normally the case. I want to say Penn State really, I think, is going to make a move here, and I'm kind of interested to see what they do. But like, isn't it kind of funny that that's how the Big Ten season is kind of just boiled down now? It's just Ohio State and Michigan. We're preparing all year for each other and for the playoffs, and that's it.
Well, and if you're a fan, put it on cruise control until you play Notre Dame and Penn State until November. Worry about those 3 games.
Yeah.
The rest of them, more than likely, well, to me, you better watch out for Purdue too. But
spoiler makers.
That's right. But my point being is most of the time, it's more times than not, you can put it on cruise control as a fan, not as a team, because that's how you get tripped up.
Yep.
But as fans, you can put it on cruise control and not worry until those 3 games or those games that you put on your calendar, mark on your calendar. Yes, get excited for every game. Watch every game. Don't sit there and hit fire day if you don't win by 60. Okay, calm down.
Sam signing up and taking sessions as a therapist for Buckeye fans.
I can help out. I live in your neighborhood. Come on, hit me up. We'll talk.
And of course,
fan, I'll calm you down.
Ohio State has Western Kentucky this weekend, where they're favored by 29 points. So all should still be okay with the Scarlet and Gray. Should, yes.
Well, in progression, they won by 20 against IU. They won by 28 against Youngstown State. If they win by 30, are people going to be okay if they cover the spread? I don't know.
I'm not sure that they will.
I don't know that they will either.
Oh, it's funny. Meanwhile, we keep talking about asking questions. Nebraska last week, they were in one of the biggest games in the country, taking on Colorado, and Nebraska did not look good at all.
First quarter, they did.
Yes, fair. But I will say I still am not wavering on confidence on Matt Rhule there yet. I think these are some of the growing pains you're just going through in year one, but Nebraska, we can take out of contention if you had them in contention of that division, just because it's so, lack of a better term, mediocre.
Wide open.
That's a more PC way to put it. Thank you. I think we could
Northwestern.
Yeah, like I think Nebraska Northwestern we can just remove and we can kind of go from there.
It's going to be a struggle for Nebraska this year to put points on the board. I think that's going to be their biggest struggle.
Well, and just hanging on to the football.
Yeah.
The turnovers are mind-boggling what the Huskers are going through there. Okay, but let's go ahead and move over to this week's games because we do have a couple of good ones. Yeah. Let's start with the one that Sam was hinting at. Illinois, they have to rebound quick. They have number 7 Penn State coming to Champaign. The Nittany Lions right now are favored by 14.5 points is the spread we're seeing for this game. Penn State last week defeated Delaware 63-7, something that Ohio State fans would have been happy with. But for Penn State, I mean, we've seen this backfield just look extremely impressive. And besides the rushing attack, Drew Aller looks really good. We knew the defense was going to be good. We expected the defense to be elite. But Drew Aller has been very good through 2 games.
I'm getting more and more confident with my pick of Penn State being the East Division winner. I really am, because excuse me, if they're playing this well, and this week will be a test for them to kind of a measuring stick of where they're going to be, because if they can dominate Illinois, The Illinois is that team that everybody's got those question marks. And even if they're not able to, even if we're correct and they're not going to replicate what they did last year this season, it's still a measuring stick of, maybe it's Penn State that's doing it to Illinois. Maybe it's the teams that Illinois has on their schedule. Illinois is going to make a bowl game more than likely, unless they're just an absolute dumpster fire compared to what they were last year. And don't get me wrong, that's a possibility, but I don't see that happening. I still see them being a bowl team, and which is, I don't know. Anybody can be a bowl team. But anyways, but my point being is I think they're going to be, a couple games over 500, maybe a little bit better than that. So if Penn State can really take it to them, I think Ohio State needs to worry about that Penn State game. I think Michigan needs to worry about that Penn State game more than maybe they would have if they weren't doing what they're doing now. Good Lord. The most plain uniforms in college football are serious this year.
It's funny that you say that too, that Ohio State really needs to be worried or pay attention to that Penn State game, because you go back to last year, they should have been worried then. I mean, Penn State was right there with them. If you remember, there was a couple of turnovers in that fourth quarter, and the game just got away, turned into like a 3-touchdown game by the end of it. But Penn State was right there, and I think Penn State's gotten better. And Ohio State, I think, is taking a little step back. Like
not a big one, but a little. That makes it even closer of a matchup than it was last year.
So I think that's going to be fascinating. When we talk about the East, I mean, you have 3 teams in the top 7 now between Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State. Michigan, we're not going to be able to discern anything from them until at least week 5. I'm not even sure they have a week 5, but I know they have another non-conference game this weekend. They have Bowling Green, and then they've opened Big Ten with Rutgers.
Oh, they have at Nebraska after that.
Okay, so week 6. Like, I mean, we're gonna be in the middle of October. I mean, I kind of see them walking away with that one too, pretty well in hand
against IU on the 14th.
Oh my! What's after that?
Michigan State at Michigan State week 8. That might be their first test because it's a rivalry. It's at Michigan State, and it depends on where Michigan State is on that.
Correct. And we'll get to some of that in just a moment. But that's October 21st before we're talking about Michigan really being challenged in any way. And again, that's if Michigan State's in good shape, because we'll talk about Michigan State. But if Michigan State, like, I think this can go one of 2 ways in East Lansing right now. And if it goes the poor way, like,
if it goes
that's still not a challenge.
If it got the poor way, Michigan's got a week 9 bye. Then they have Purdue in week 10, depending on what Purdue's doing in week 10. Week 11, which is November, Penn State at Penn State.
That is amazing.
It could be November 11th before we know what Michigan's got.
That is amazing. I mean, we were just talking about a moment ago that some of the fans can just wait until the final week to start getting in, actually, if you want, on the action.
Michigan doesn't have to wait until November, or has to wait until November, really, unless some of these teams really start stepping out. And like I said, if Purdue does, but they still host Purdue. And and Purdue's still not, I mean, they weren't the greatest last year. They played last year and they weren't the greatest last year. So, like, I don't think they're as good as they were last year, Purdue. Or at least at this point, not as good as they were last year. So that's a cruise to me. I mean, it just, they've got until November 11th.
Well, and the only thing I'll say is, and I always remember this in every one of these conversations, because you brought up the Michigan State-Michigan game, October 21st. I remember just 3 years ago when Rocky Lombardi and Michigan State went to the Big House as 24.5-point dogs, I think it was, and came out with the win. Like, that rivalry can just be so funky that sometimes it really just doesn't matter. And now, granted, Michigan's a lot better this year than they were in that 2020 team, and we're so much more susceptible. But, like, to your point, that game can just be weird. And so, like, we'll see what that one kind of produces. But in terms of top talent, and that's why, honestly, if you're looking at the Big Ten this year, the conference as a whole is taking a bit of a step back in terms of talent and productivity. Like, you've got a couple of elites up top, but like after we get through Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State, like the next ranked team, the only other ranked team is Iowa at number 25. And they're just kind of hanging on.
20 points last week.
But they win, dang it. They win. And they get a defensive touchdown that helps Brian Ferentz with his contract. I mean, it is so funny to watch what kind of happens there.
Do you think your DC is telling him, hey, if we score 14 points, that doesn't count towards your 25. You need to score 25 offensive points.
You got the DC or the AD?
Both.
I got DC Phil Parker being like, okay, you owe me a steak. Like, I'm helping you out here. Like, you
that and one heck of a Christmas gift.
Oh, it's great. So we've talked a little bit about that Penn State Illinois game. I think it's going to be hard to see Illinois winning this game. The only thing I will mention that we talked about for the Illini, they've played Toledo and Kansas to this point. Those are two mobile quarterbacks.
Yes.
Those quarterbacks move. Allard doesn't move so much. So maybe if you take out the legs of the quarterback, take out the dual threat of the quarterback, maybe Illinois' defense is fit better to match with Penn State, but ultimately I think Penn State's just too much.
It comes down to line play then. You know, how well can the Penn State offensive line keep the Illinois defensive line from getting penetration and putting Aller on the move if he's not a mobile quarterback.
And their left tackle, Olu, is going to be like a top 5 draft pick next year when he goes. Like, everybody's stunned that he even came back. So, like, they have maybe the best tackle, probably the best tackle in all of college football. So that's Aller's blind side. So,
well, in the world of NIL, we're going to see a lot of these upper echelon players that if they don't like where their draft, like where they could be projected to go, if they don't like the team that is in there, they can just choose to come back for their next year of football in college and make a boatload of money there too. And then just, you know, they have a little bit more leverage as to where they go without just saying, I'm not going there, you know, or whatever. Like, well, Eli Manning did.
Yeah. And that story came out with Caleb Williams.
Yeah.
That his dad had said, look, if the Cardinals want to tank, not so sure that Caleb Williams won't just come back to college.
He might play a year in the Big Ten.
He's going to win 3 Heismans in a row. But I find that to be so fascinating because for the last couple of years, we've known that like women's athletes, like especially basketball players like Caitlin Clark, I mean, in the current day, Angel Reese with her, some of the other like stars, they make more money in college than they would in the pros. So they're sticking around as long as they can.
Which means that Caitlin Clark could be around 2 more years.
You're right. But for the idea of the NFL, I mean, we're talking about the number 1 sports product there is in the country. We're talking about a product that before even ticket sales, just with TV contracts, you're looking at $10 billion a year with the NFL. Like, the fact that they would be getting beat by this college chaotic like landscape and not necessarily beat, but just the fact that anything that college could provide would beat anything from the NFL, to me kind of blows my mind. And like, I get it. We're talking rookie contracts versus endorsements, whatever, like totally understand. But that is crazy. And the other thing to me too, and this goes to really show, I think, just how much of this nature is pay for play. Nobody's talking about this. If all of his money was coming from just name, image, and likeness, he could continue to get that money in the NFL. Right. He could continue all of his sponsorships with companies for his name, image, and likeness. But it sounds like there's quite a few sponsorships, and we know this is a thing with everywhere and everybody today, that are because he's at that institution specifically. Sure. So I find that to be kind of funny that nobody's even pointed that part out, that like if it's just because Caleb Williams' name, well, they would stay with him in the NFL, right?
But it's the most thinly veiled BS I've ever heard in my life. Like, no, it's your name, image, and likeness, but you got to hit USC. You know,
Caleb, we really want to sponsor you as a Trojan.
Yes, right. In maroon or in that burgundy and gold or whatever their official color is or whatever.
But that is such a fascinating idea that's where college sports has landed, where it can one up the offer from the NFL for some of the high prospects. It'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. Also in the Big Ten this week, we mentioned this is a pretty big story for so many reasons, but Michigan State will host Washington. It's a Peacock exclusive game. Michigan State without its head coach, who is suspended without pay. They have acting head coach Harlan Barnett in, and they bring Mark D'Antonio back. And it just so happened to coincide with what was supposed to be the 10-year reunion from that 2013 Rose Bowl team. They were coming back this weekend anyway for this Washington game to be honored and celebrated. And now Mark D'Antonio, who is going to be part of the celebration, now be on the sideline. It's so coincidental how that all ended up working out. But for Michigan State, I mean, you talk about the load of adversity that's sitting there without Mel Tucker there on the sideline. And we kind of mentioned it earlier. I think this can go one of two ways. I think this group can rally around the adversity. And from all indication early on from acting head coach Harlan Barnett, there's been several player meetings. The coaches are meeting with all the players individually. Like they're bunkering down and they're trying to get the rally. Like everything has been taken the right steps. There's a couple of older traditions that are being brought back now with some of the old faces kind of getting back in charge here at Michigan State. But this can either go that way where it rallies, it inspires, it brings them together, or this could bottom out. And I'm not sure what you can kind of see maybe being in the middle. I would just say the worst case scenario doesn't seem as bad to me now after hearing Harlan Barnett in this last week's press conference. Like, I do believe there is some buy-in from the guys. And you wonder in a situation like this, especially in today's day and age, how many people will hit the transfer portal when adversity like this hits. And the answer so far, none. Nobody has decided to walk out that door. So that indicates to me we're still going to see a football team from Michigan State through the year, at least here in the next coming weeks. Now, what does that mean for this upcoming week with Washington coming to town? And the Huskies what are they ranked? Let's pull it up. 8th?
Yeah.
Number 8, Washington coming to town and led by Michael Penix Jr. This is an offense that's scoring 50 points a game right now through the first 2 games. And they're averaging a second best mark in the country. I think 9.2 yards per play. Not completion, yards per play.
That's almost a first down every play.
Yeah, like that's how dominating and electric Washington's offense has been so far. And we know last year Michigan State went to Washington and really struggled to bother Penix and cover any of the receivers. I mean, really, it just was bomb after bomb against Michigan State's secondary. Will they be able to, and this is, again, tackling the schematic part of it, will they be able to shut down or limit that passing attack this year? And the personality or humanity part of this, will they be able to rally around what has just happened at their home?
Well, excuse me, they have to be mentally exhausted. Like to go through something that they've had to go through the past, couple of week and a half or 2 weeks, that it's got to be just absolutely mentally exhausting. Plus, you've got to re-gear to, it's pretty much the same coaching staff minus one. Mm-hmm. Like, you still have to now there's a different person in charge. Are they keeping everything exactly the same, or are they changing it a little bit to where, so you've got those minor changes or maybe even major changes. But then you've got the number 8 team in the country walking in too. Yep. And Mike Penix Jr. is a Heisman candidate at this point. So you've got that to deal with. There's a lot of moving pieces. I think it's going to be whether or not they can get over the mental exhaustion. And I think they'll compete because of just those coaches that came in and look, they're going to tell them, look, we're doing everything the same. We're going to keep doing what we do. We're going to keep competing. I think they'll at least 3/4 of the game be right in it, if not up. but I don't know that they've got enough to hold on to against a team like Washington, because I don't know that their defensive backfield's much better than it was last year. And Washington's offense is still high powered and fires on all cylinders, and they're throwing the ball down the field,
Right.
and that could be the demise for Michigan State on Saturday.
Well, and fair enough. The only thing I would say to that, and really what Michigan State's got to hope for, with that front seven being as good as it is,
yeah,
the front seven's got to be able to get to Penix without bringing anybody from the secondary. Honestly,
and if I remember last year, they didn't do that.
No, like Penix had time. Penix was moving. Penix had a day last time. But like if Michigan State actually if they're going to win this game, pull off this top 10 upset, I think that's what has to happen. I think that front four has got to get to Penix, where you still have guys back there in coverage. It's going to be interesting to see for so many different reasons what happens on Saturday. And although, I mean, look, one team's not ranked, the other one is ranked to 8th in the country. You could say Washington's better. They're favored by 16 points on the road.
I don't know that it'll be 16 points, though.
Yeah, and again, like I said to you, I've been impressed with what's come out of Barnett's mouth this week and just the way that they're buying in. What does it ultimately lead to? I'm kind of curious to watch, but I do believe there's been a serious buy-in, and I'm really interested and kind of excited to watch the resiliency. I think anytime you see young people kind of band together and just show that they're resilient, I always find that inspiring. And I think Saturday's got an example for that for Michigan State.
Let me also say, I wouldn't be shocked if Michigan State won, with it being just such a high energy, like the big matchup. And then that huge, oh my goodness, what have we been just going through, all that change, that they do step up for it, and they do win. But I just don't know that it's going to happen. I just don't know that I can say, yeah, I feel that they're going to win. They're going to give it all they can. They're going to try to get him that win. But I just don't know that they can't. Washington's darn good. I'm going to keep falling back on that. They're darn good this year.
And no, I got no quibble. Like, you're not wrong. They are very, very talented. I'm very interested to see what comes out of Spartan Stadium on Saturday.
And I think if they could lose, but you could still go out of that going, we're going to be okay this year.
Yeah, 100%. 100% you could. And I think that was, like I said, there was a worst case scenario when all this broke in my mind, and I don't believe that worst case scenario is quite in reach for Michigan State, which should be a relief and a good feeling for Spartan fans, because I from listening to what's going on in those locker rooms and the buy-in, I don't think this thing bottoms out quite as drastic as it could have. What does that mean for Saturday's game and in such short notice of everything and facing a great team? That's what we got to find out. But I do know, before we continue on, you had a new game you wanted to play here.
Yeah, I wanted to call high-low, and I've got a list of all the games that involve Big Ten teams this week. I have all of the ticket prices available on the secondary market.
Okay.
And I will read through, and I'll give you a few that we're going to eliminate that obviously aren't high or low. Okay. And then I want you to tell me who has the highest ticket price and who has the lowest ticket price. If I had some cash in my hands that I wanted to go watch a game, if I had all the cash that I wanted, I could go to the most expensive, or if I had just a few bucks, which ones I could go to. Okay.
I got you.
We have the every team is playing. So we've got Virginia at Maryland, Penn State at Illinois, Louisville at Indiana, which is also in Indianapolis, though.
Really?
Yes, they're playing.
I was unaware.
Yeah, it's the only 3-game series that they signed up for. IU canceled it, so the next 2 years they're not playing it anymore. They bought Louisville out. Okay, so Louisville at Indiana, in Indianapolis. Yes, I said Indiana. Georgia Southern at Wisconsin, Minnesota at North Carolina, number 20 North Carolina, Northwestern at number 21 Duke. Western Michigan at 25 Iowa, Virginia Tech at Rutgers, Western Kentucky at Ohio State, Washington at Michigan State, Northern Illinois at Nebraska, Bowling Green at Michigan, and Syracuse at Purdue. Okay, so that's our docket for the week. Western Kentucky at Ohio State, you can go watch for $25. It's not the highest, and it's not the lowest. Northern Illinois at Nebraska. Okay, you hear that matchup? You can go watch for $42.
That sounds about right to me.
It is not the highest.
Yeah.
Virginia Tech at Rutgers. You can go for $27 or $27.
Okay.
Western Michigan at Illinois or at Iowa, you can go watch for $25.
Oh, okay.
Minnesota at North Carolina, catch it for $21.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty impressive, huh? Pretty impressive. Penn State at Illinois, $24.
Oh, that's surprising to me.
Yeah. Northwestern at Duke.
Oh, this has to be sitting around 17, right?
$9. Not the lowest.
What?
Not the I mean, the game's high-low. You've got to guess the lowest. $9, not the lowest. Okay,
wow.
So I've given you a few to eliminate.
So what do we have left? I can't see ticket prices, but I'm getting the matchups in front of me.
Okay, so we still have Virginia at Maryland. We have Louisville at IU, but it's at Lucas Oil. We have Georgia Southern at Wisconsin. We have Washington at Michigan State. We have Bowling Green at Michigan and Syracuse at Purdue. So give me your low. Let's start with your low. Which do you feel is the low?
Boy, I really would have guessed before this one it was Northwestern Duke. So I'm already reeling on confidence. I'm gonna go Georgia Southern at Wisconsin.
That's the Price is Right. You missed it.
Yeah. How much was that one?
$13.
Okay.
So it's actually more expensive than Northwestern Duke.
Okay, so let's go Louisville at Indiana or at Indianapolis. Is it Bowling Green at Michigan then?
Virginia at Maryland, you can go watch for $7.
It's 2 Power 5 schools.
I understand this.
You can go watch Talia Tagovailoa, who's thrown for 8,000 yards for $7.
$7.
Wow. Okay.
So that's the low for the week. You can go watch Virginia and Maryland play in College Park for $7.
So what were the other two? What was Louisville, Indiana?
Louisville at Indiana, $53. Not the most expensive.
I definitely wouldn't think it'd be the most expensive.
Lucas Oil, though. Lucas Oil, you didn't take Lucas Oil into consideration.
Well, I did, and I thought because there were so many seats that maybe some of them were selling really cheap is what I was thinking there. What about Bowling Green, Michigan?
Are you making this your guess?
No. That was my other low guess. I already had my high guess.
You did.
I haven't said it, but I know it.
Well, what's your high guess?
It's got to be Michigan State, Washington, right? What?
$37 to watch Washington and Michigan State.
No.
Yeah. Louisville IU's more expensive.
That's crazy. So then what else even exists for the high? It can't be Syracuse, Purdue.
No, $31 for that one.
What other games have we not even hit on?
Well, you haven't said Western Kentucky. Oh, did I give you Western Kentucky at Ohio?
Yeah, you did.
Oh, okay. Well, I didn't give you Bowling Green, Michigan. I didn't give you. Well, that's all you've got. Bowling Green, Michigan's the most expensive at $64.
You're kidding.
Nope.
They're 40.5-point favorites.
And they're the most expensive ticket to go watch. Just yet another way to just be mad at Michigan, right?
And there's the most tickets for that one. That was the other part of this I was playing into. I'm like, oh, well over 100-some thousand. I'm sure there's a cheap ticket out
well
there.
over 100,000, and it's Bowling Green, which is not the worst of the worst, but still not great.
Wow, that's crazy. I'm pretty stunned by that.
Bowling Green at Michigan, 7:30 game on Saturday. $64 to go see, but you can go. But you can go watch, Washington, Michigan State just up the road for darn near half as much.
I would go get that ticket.
Yes, I would too. It'd be a better game. It doesn't even matter that I don't have a rooting interest. It's just that's a better game to watch.
That's crazy to me. Wow. Okay, yeah, that's I like this game idea, the high-low. All right, here on the way out, before we close down the doors for another edition of Big Talk, we've talked a little bit about some of these games. Let's go ahead now and pick some of the winners. Penn State, Illinois. What do you got?
Penn State.
Penn State.
Eventually, it might be close. What's the spread on that?
The spread is 14.5.
Yeah, I think they cover it even. I think Penn State's that good. And I don't think I'm not buying into Illinois replicating what they did last year. I just don't see that happening. They haven't shown any evidence that that's the case this year to this point. I think Penn State covers it.
I'm with you on that. I'll take Penn State as well. Let's go Michigan State, Washington.
I kind of talked about this. I think what's the spread?
16, Washington.
I don't think Washington covers it, so I'll take Michigan State in the points, but I think Washington wins. I think it's one of those that Michigan State will compete for a really long time, as long as they possibly can, but eventually the Jimmies and Joes are going to take over, and they're going to I think Washington wins, but it's closer than the 16.
Purdue hosting Syracuse. The Orange are 2.5-point favorites.
Which tells me it's pretty near a push what Vegas is telling you.
Well, Syracuse is on the road though, and Syracuse.
Right. But Purdue so it's like a 5-point spread. Sorry, I was thinking the wrong way. Rondé Gadsden's really, really good. That Schaefer, I think it's the Schaefer kid, is a good quarterback. They played last year. Purdue should have had him. I'm going to take Purdue. I'm going to take Purdue outright.
I don't want to break
it's a tough one.
I'm going Syracuse.
I waffled on it. If you could tell, I was sitting there. I with it being that close of a spread, I still think I'm going to take Purdue. Yeah.
Let's play a couple here. We got 3 more I'll throw at you. Will they cover? Number 25 Iowa is 28.5-point favorites over Western Michigan.
Hey, let's take it this way. Let's look at it this way. Anytime it's over 25 points, I'm going to say no, because you know what? I don't think they're scoring 25 points in the game.
I wanted to play this game just for that comedic effect. I'm so glad that delivered. Okay, that is perfect. Michigan is 40.5-point favorites on Bowling Green. Do they cover the 40.5? They do. Okay. Ohio State,
which makes it even more maddening that they're the most expensive ticket.
Right. Yeah. Come watch a 8-touchdown differential ball game.
Right.
And let's do Ohio State 29-point favorites over Western Kentucky. Do they cover, and do they have a quarterback heading to South Bend next week?
Well, they'll have at least quarterbacks on the roster going to South Bend. I'm going to say no. I don't think they cover it.
Okay. Wow, things are really going to get panicky in Columbus.
If they only win by 4 touchdowns, I'm right.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Yeah,
but I think Ohio State goes into South Bend with a better idea of who their quarterback is. I think Kyle McCord's going to be fine. I really do think he's going to be fine. But I think you're going to go. Ohio State's going to go into South Bend with their fans panicking, like it's D-Day, like it's the end of the world. It's over. Like that, we haven't dominated. We didn't dominate anybody in our first 3 weeks, and mind you, they won by 20 plus points probably all 3 of those weeks, and we haven't dominated. But I think that's the way it works out. And I'll say, actually, I'm going to switch. Yes, I think they cover it.
Wow, what a pivot at the last second.
Yeah, I'm just looking at. I think they're gonna keep improving, but I think they may win by 32. Like they're barely gonna cover it, and that's what's gonna panic Ohio State fans. So I think they're going to completely. I don't believe they covered against Youngstown because they only won by 28 because I think they were 30+ point favorites. I think they're going to keep continuing to get better, and I think they cover it, but you're still going to have Ohio State fans panicking going into South Bend.
Interesting. And
now, is there a chance? Let me ask you this: is there a chance if they struggle? And I'm using the air quotes. Struggle. Does Ohio State go in as an underdog to Northwest or to Notre Dame in South Bend, since it's in South Bend, or is it like a push? Because Notre Dame's not playing horribly.
No, Notre Dame's playing really well.
Yeah,
really well.
Yeah. I mean, they beat NC State by 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, and that one had a weather delay and some goofy stuff go on in that game. And we'll talk a lot about this game next week. But I mean, Notre Dame's got a heck of a running back in Audric Estime. The quarterback Sam Hartman coming over from Wake Forest. It's working. Like Notre Dame looks pretty good. But I imagine if somebody was setting the line, they'll look at this and be like, Ohio State typically delivers in these big games, and we haven't really seen it from Notre Dame for quite some time.
Ohio State as their favorite.
I feel like that. What do you want to call it? I don't want to say brand because like all time, maybe just the recent like performances in those kinds of games
recently.
Yeah, like I think people tend to just kind of lean with Ohio State because of that. And Notre Dame still does kind of need to prove it. Notre Dame's tripped in a lot of big games throughout the last decade.
Yeah.
So we'll see. But I'm excited. We'll talk about that one for sure. Next week. But okay, so that'll do it for another edition of Big Talk.
Hey, look, we can see each other even though I've got my graphic up.
This is nice, ain't it? But college sports with a Midwest perspective, blue collar and blue blood. All right, on the way out, Sam, you want to let everybody know where they can find us?
Yes, sir. We've got the TikToks, the Instagrams, and the platform formerly known as Twitter. It's at B1G_talk. That's B1G, not BIG. Dalton, B1G_talk, big talk. Go to Facebook. It's B1G Talk, big talk, not all big talk. Let's not talk about them. Okay, it's just big talk.
We'll just keep it big.
That's right. We're keeping it big. That's right. Every week we're on the ASAP network. We stream every Friday at this point, every Friday morning on ASAP network. If you miss the stream, you can go to Spotify and get the video replay of that, or you can just find our podcast version anywhere else you find podcasts through Lounge Media Group.
All right. So
and eventually on Lounge Media Group Radio. That's coming soon.
Perfect. All right. Well, hopefully everybody has a good Big Ten football weekend once again here this upcoming Saturday.
And you can still get to Maryland for $7 to watch the game tonight. So the cheapest one in the conference. Go for it.
Just got to worry about your transit and stay. But besides that, you're good with the ticket.
By then it comes out to be $85 a ticket, but that's fine. It's fine.
Thank you all so much for tuning in and joining us for another edition of Big Talk. For myself, Dalton Shetler, my partner, Sam Sprunger. So long, everybody.
See ya.